Marcus Williams adjusted his military cap one last time before entering the bustling airport terminal. The 34-year-old Army veteran moved with purpose through the crowd, his faithful German Shepherd service dog, Rex, walking calmly beside him. After 3 tours in Afghanistan, Marcus had returned home with more than just memories. An improvised explosive device had changed his life forever, leaving him with severe PTSD and mobility issues that made everyday tasks challenging. Rex wasn't just a pet, he was Marcus's lifeline. The specially trained service dog could detect panic attacks before they started, provide stability when Marcus felt dizzy, and create a protective barrier in crowded spaces. Today they were flying to Denver for Marcus's sister's wedding, a trip he had been both excited about and nervous to take. The terminal buzzed with the usual chaos of travelers rushing to catch flights, families saying goodbye, and announcements echoing overhead. Marcus approached the check-in counter for Flight 447, pulling out his ticket and military ID. Rex sat perfectly still beside him, wearing his official service dog vest with clear identification patches. Behind the counter stood Jennifer Walsh, a gate agent who had been working for the airline for 8 years. She looked up from her computer screen as Marcus approached, her expression immediately shifting when she noticed the dog. Without even glancing at Marcus's documentation, she shook her head firmly. "Sir, you cannot bring that animal on this aircraft," Jennifer announced loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Pets need to be in carriers and placed in cargo. You should have arranged this when you booked your ticket." Marcus felt his heart rate increase slightly, but he remained calm, having faced this type of misunderstanding before. He pulled out his service dog certification papers and placed them on the counter along with his military ID and boarding pass. "Ma'am, this is Rex, my service dog. I have all the proper documentation here. He's trained to assist me with my service-connected disabilities," Marcus explained politely, keeping his voice steady despite the familiar anxiety creeping in. Jennifer barely glanced at the papers before pushing them back across the counter. "I don't care what those papers say. Company policy is clear. No animals in the cabin, period. You'll need to make other arrangements or find another flight." The conversation was drawing attention from other passengers in line. An elderly woman behind Marcus shifted uncomfortably, while a businessman checked his watch impatiently. Rex sensed Marcus's rising stress and gently pressed against his leg, providing the grounding pressure he needed. "Ma'am, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, service dogs are allowed on aircraft. This isn't a pet. He's medical equipment, just like someone's wheelchair or oxygen tank." Marcus continued, pulling out his phone to show additional documentation. Jennifer's voice grew louder and more aggressive. "Don't lecture me about policies, sir. I know the rules, and I'm telling you that dog cannot board this plane. If you continue to argue, I'll have to call security." Marcus noticed several passengers now openly staring. Some pulled out their phones, and he could see the judgment in their eyes. This was exactly the type of public confrontation that triggered his anxiety. His breathing became slightly shallow, and Rex immediately responded by performing a deep pressure therapy technique, placing his front paws on Marcus's lap while he sat down in a nearby chair. A young mother traveling with her children whispered to her husband, "That man's dog is so well behaved. Look how calm it is." Her husband nodded, observing how Rex never barked, didn't sniff around, and remained focused entirely on Marcus. Jennifer called over her supervisor, David Chen, who had been handling another issue at a different gate. David approached the situation with a more measured tone, but after Jennifer explained her version of events, he simply nodded in agreement. "Sir, I understand your situation, but our staff has made the determination that this animal doesn't meet our requirements for cabin travel. We can accommodate the dog in our pet cargo area for an additional fee," David offered, clearly trying to find a middle ground. Marcus stood up slowly, his legs shaking slightly from the stress. "Gentlemen, with respect, you cannot charge me fees for my service dog, and he cannot be separated from me. He's trained to detect my panic attacks and provide mobility assistance. Putting him in cargo would be like asking someone to put their wheelchair in storage during the flight." The gate area had grown quieter as more people tuned into the confrontation. A few passengers seemed sympathetic, while others appeared annoyed by the delay. Jennifer crossed her arms and tapped her foot, impatiently. Look, I don't know what kind of game you're trying to play here, but that's just a regular dog with a vest anyone can buy online. We see this all the time. People trying to pass off their pets as service animals to avoid fees, Jennifer said, dismissively. Her words hit Marcus like a physical blow. After everything he had sacrificed for his country, after the months of rehabilitation and training with Rex, to have his legitimate need questioned so publicly was devastating. The familiar tightness in his chest began to build, and his vision started to tunnel slightly. Rex immediately went into action, performing his trained response sequence. The dog moved to position himself between Marcus and the crowd, creating a physical barrier while providing deep pressure therapy. Several passengers watched in amazement as the dog's behavior clearly demonstrated professional training, far beyond what any pet would possess. An off-duty pilot walking through the terminal stopped to observe the situation. Captain Sarah Mitchell had seen many service dogs during her 15 years of flying and recognized Rex's professional demeanor immediately. She approached the group slowly, her captain's uniform commanding immediate respect from the airline staff. Marcus tried to remain composed, but the public nature of the confrontation, combined with the blatant disrespect for his service and sacrifice, was overwhelming his coping mechanisms. Rex pressed closer, providing the steady pressure that helped ground Marcus during episodes. The tension in the gate area was becoming palpable as other passengers realized they were witnessing something more significant than a simple policy dispute. Several people had their phones out, some recording the interaction, others researching service dog laws. The situation was escalating beyond what anyone had anticipated, and it was clear that whatever happened next would have consequences far beyond this single flight. Captain Sarah Mitchell stepped forward with the confidence that came from years of commanding aircraft and managing difficult situations. She had witnessed the entire confrontation from a distance and recognized both the professional behavior of the service dog and the clear distress of the veteran. "Excuse me," Captain Mitchell said, addressing the gate agents directly. Her pilot's uniform immediately commanded attention from Jennifer and David. "I couldn't help but notice this situation, and I think there might be some confusion about federal regulations." Jennifer straightened up, clearly recognizing the authority of a pilot, but maintained her defensive stance. "Captain, we're following company policy about animals on aircraft. This passenger is trying to bring an unauthorized pet into the cabin." Sarah looked down at Rex, who remained perfectly positioned beside Marcus, alert but calm, showing none of the excited behavior typical of untrained animals in stressful situations. The dog's focus was entirely on his handler, ignoring the crowd sounds and smells of the busy terminal. "That's clearly a legitimate service dog," Sarah stated matter-of-factly. "Look at his positioning, his calm demeanor, and his focus on his handler. I've seen hundreds of emotional support animals and pets over the years, and this dog's behavior is distinctly different. He's working." Marcus felt a wave of relief at having someone in authority recognize what should have been obvious. From the beginning, Rex sensed the slight decrease in his stress and maintained his position while relaxing slightly. David Chen, the supervisor, seemed less certain now. "Captain, we have to be careful about people gaming the system. We see fake service dogs all by the time." "Then ask the right questions," Sarah replied firmly. "Under ADA guidelines, you can ask 2 specific questions. Is this a service dog required because of a disability? And what work or task has the dog been trained to perform? You cannot ask about the nature of the person's disability, require documentation, or demand demonstrations." Marcus appreciated having an advocate, but he was prepared to answer those questions. "Rex is trained to detect my panic attacks before they escalate, provide deep pressure therapy during episodes, assist with mobility when I experience dizziness, and create barriers in crowded spaces. He's also trained to retrieve medications and guide me to exits during disorientation episodes." As if to demonstrate, Rex subtly shifted his position as more passengers gathered around, creating a natural barrier between Marcus and the crowd while maintaining his calm demeanor. Several people in the growing audience murmured appreciatively at the dog's obvious training. Jennifer remained skeptical. Anyone can say their dog does those things. How do we know this isn't just a well-trained pet? An elderly gentleman in line behind them spoke up. Ma'am, I'm a retired veterinarian and I can tell you that dog's behavior is nothing like a pet's. Look at his body language, his focus, his positioning. That's professional training, not basic obedience. More passengers began voicing their observations. A nurse traveling for a conference noted how Rex responded to Marcus's subtle stress signals. A mother pointed out how the dog ignored her children, despite their attempts to get his attention, showing remarkable discipline. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed David a reference guide. Here are the federal regulations. Service dogs are not pets, they're medical equipment. They're allowed in aircraft cabins without fees, without carriers, and without advance notice. Refusing service to someone because of their service dog is discrimination. The situation was becoming increasingly public, with passengers throughout the gate area now watching and listening. Some were recording on their phones, and Marcus could see posts being uploaded to social media in real time. The airline's handling of the situation was being broadcast far beyond the terminal. David realized the severity of the situation and attempted to de-escalate. Perhaps we can make an exception in this case, he offered, but his words only made things worse. This isn't about making exceptions, Captain Mitchell said firmly. This is about following federal law. Service dogs have the legal right to accompany. They're handlers on aircraft, period. There's no exception needed because no rule is being broken. Marcus stood slowly, Rex immediately adjusting his position to provide stability. I understand there's confusion about service dogs, but I've provided all the documentation I'm legally required to provide. I've answered your questions about his training. I'm not asking for special treatment, I'm asking for the same rights as any other passenger. Jennifer's frustration was becoming apparent to everyone watching. Fine, but if that dog causes any problems during the flight, you'll be responsible. Rex has flown dozens of times without incident, Marcus replied. He's trained specifically for aircraft environments. He won't bark, won't move from his position, won't interact with other passengers, and won't require any special accommodations beyond the floor space at my feet. A businessman who had been watching the entire interaction stepped forward. I fly over 100,000 miles a year, and I've seen plenty of actual pets being passed off as service animals. This is clearly the real deal. The airline staff should apologize for this discrimination. The word discrimination hung in the air like a challenge. Several passengers nodded in agreement, and the atmosphere in the gate area shifted noticeably. What had started as a policy dispute was now being recognized as something more serious. Sarah addressed David directly. As a pilot, I'm concerned about how this situation reflects on the airline's training and policies. Federal regulations are clear, and ADA compliance isn't optional. This veteran and his service dog should have been accommodated immediately without question. A young woman traveling with her family approached Marcus directly. Thank you for your service, she said simply. My brother served 2 tours in Iraq, and seeing how you're being treated is just wrong. The public support was overwhelming, but Marcus remained focused on simply getting to his sister's wedding. Rex continued his steady presence, providing the grounding Marcus needed to navigate the increasingly complex social situation. David made a decision. Let me call my regional manager and clarify our policies. Captain Mitchell, would you mind staying for a few minutes to help us understand the regulations better? Of course, Sarah replied. But understand that this gentleman has already been delayed and subjected to discrimination. The airline needs to make this right immediately and ensure this doesn't happen to other disabled passengers. The terminal PA system crackled with boarding announcements for other flights, reminding everyone that travel schedules waited for no one. Marcus checked his watch, wondering if he would make his connection in Denver, while Rex maintained his vigilant watch over his handler's well-being. The situation had evolved from a simple misunderstanding into a public education moment about disability rights, military service, and corporate responsibility. Whatever happened next would determine not just whether Marcus made his flight, but how dozens of witnesses would remember their encounter with both discrimination and advocacy in action. David Chen stepped away from the gate counter, his phone pressed to his ear as he spoke in hushed tones with the regional manager. The conversation lasted several minutes while passengers, Captain Mitchell and Marcus, waited in tense silence. Rex remained perfectly positioned, his professional demeanor unchanged despite the prolonged stress of the situation. Meanwhile, several passengers had taken initiative. The retired veterinarian, Dr. Robert Hayes, approached Marcus with his business card. "Son, I've worked with service dogs for 30 years, and Rex here is exceptional. If this airline gives you any more trouble, I'm willing to provide professional testimony about his obvious training and behavior." Marcus thanked Dr. Hayes while trying to manage his rising anxiety about missing his connection. Rex sensed the increase in stress and performed a subtle alert, pressing gently against Marcus's leg to provide grounding pressure. The dog's response was so natural and immediate that even skeptical passengers could see this wasn't trained behavior from a pet. A mother traveling with her 2 young children had been watching the interaction with growing indignation. "Excuse me?" she said to Jennifer, who was now standing awkwardly behind the counter. "My children have been watching this whole thing, and they want to know why the nice soldier and his helper dog are being treated badly. How am I supposed to explain this?" Jennifer shifted uncomfortably, clearly realizing that her initial stance was becoming increasingly difficult to defend. The public nature of the confrontation had transformed what she likely saw as routine policy enforcement into a much more complex situation involving civil rights, military service, and basic human dignity. Captain Mitchell used the waiting time to educate nearby passengers about service dogs and disability rights. The key difference, she explained to a small group that had gathered, is that service dogs are trained to perform specific tasks related to their handler's disability. They're not emotional support animals or therapy dogs. They're working medical equipment, just like a wheelchair or hearing aid. A college student recording the interaction on her phone looked up from her screen. "This is going viral already. People are sharing it everywhere with hashtags about veteran rights and disability discrimination. The airline's going to have some serious explaining to do." Marcus overheard and felt a mix of emotions. He hadn't wanted this much attention, but perhaps the public awareness would help other disabled veterans avoid similar situations. Rex seemed to sense his emotional conflict and provided another gentle pressure point against his leg. David returned from his phone call, his expression noticeably different. The regional manager had clearly provided guidance that changed his perspective on the situation. He approached Marcus directly, avoiding eye contact initially. "Mr. Williams, I apologize for the confusion. My regional manager has clarified our policies, and you and Rex are absolutely welcome on Flight 447. There will be no additional fees, and you can board during our pre-boarding process for passengers requiring assistance." The gate area erupted in spontaneous applause from the passengers who had been watching. Several people called out, "About time," and "Thank you for your service." Marcus felt relief flooding through his system, and Rex's posture relaxed slightly as his handler's stress levels decreased. But Captain Mitchell wasn't satisfied with just resolving this individual case. "David, what about training for your staff? This situation should never have happened in the first place. Federal law has been clear about service dogs for decades." Jennifer finally spoke up, her voice much quieter than before. "I honestly didn't know all the regulations. We get a lot of people trying to pass off pets as service animals, and I thought I was just following policy." "That's exactly the problem," said Dr. Hayes, who had continued listening to the conversation. "Legitimate service dog handlers get punished because of people who abuse the system. But the solution isn't to assume every service dog is fake. It's to learn how to tell the difference." A businessman who had missed his original flight due to watching the drama unfold approached the group. "I work in corporate training, and I've seen this exact scenario at companies across the country. The issue isn't bad intentions. It's inadequate training and unclear policies." Marcus appreciated the support but was exhausted from the emotional roller coaster. "I just want to get to my sister's wedding," he said simply. "I've been dealing with situations like this for 3 years since I got Rex. It shouldn't be this hard." Sarah pulled out her business card and handed it to David. "I want to be contacted about improving your airline's disability awareness training. This veteran handled this situation with more grace than your staff did, and that's unacceptable." David nodded, clearly understanding that this incident would have consequences beyond the immediate situation. We'll absolutely be reviewing our training protocols, and Mr. Williams, the airline, would like to offer you a voucher for future travel, as an apology for this experience. I don't want vouchers, Marcus replied. I want your staff to treat the next disabled veteran with dignity from the start. That's worth more than any compensation. The boarding announcement for Flight 447 finally crackled over the PA system. Marcus stood slowly, Rex immediately adjusting to provide stability. The dog's seamless response to his handler's movements continued to demonstrate professional training that even the most skeptical observers couldn't deny. As they prepared to board, several passengers approached Marcus to thank him for his service and express support. A young father shook his hand and said, "My kids learned something important today about standing up for what's right." An elderly woman hugged Marcus gently and whispered, "Your dog is beautiful, and you both deserve respect. Thank you for your patience with ignorant people like me who didn't understand before today." Jennifer approached hesitantly as Marcus prepared to board. "Mr. Williams, I owe you an apology. I was wrong, and I handled this poorly. I hope you can forgive me, and I promise to do better." Marcus looked at her for a moment, Rex sitting calmly beside him. "We all make mistakes. What matters is learning from them. Just remember that behind every service dog is someone who's already fighting battles you can't see." Captain Mitchell walked with them toward the boarding bridge. "You know, in all my years of flying, this is one of those moments that reminds me why I love working with people. Yes, there was ignorance and discrimination, but there was also education, advocacy, and community support." As they reached the gate entrance, Marcus turned back to look at the crowd that had gathered to support him. Dozens of strangers had taken time out of their travel day to stand up for disability rights and military service. Rex had remained calm and professional throughout, serving as both a working partner and an ambassador for legitimate service dogs everywhere. The incident that had started as routine discrimination had transformed into something larger, a teaching moment about disability rights, the sacrifices of veterans, and the power of community advocacy. As Marcus and Rex finally boarded the aircraft, both exhausted but vindicated, the ripple effects of their airport experience were just beginning to spread across social media and into the broader conversation about how society treats its most vulnerable members. As Marcus and Rex made their way down the aircraft aisle, the flight attendants had clearly been briefed about the situation. The head flight attendant, Maria Santos, greeted them with genuine warmth and professionalism that stood in stark contrast to the gate experience. "Mr. Williams, welcome aboard. I'm Maria, and we're honored to have you flying with us today. I've prepared the bulkhead seat for you and Rex so you'll have extra room. Is there anything specific you need for Rex during the flight?" Marcus felt a wave of relief at being treated with dignity and respect. "Thank you, Maria. Rex just needs the floor space at my feet. He won't move from that position during the flight, unless I have a medical episode." As they settled into their seats, other passengers boarding the aircraft recognized Marcus from the gate incident. Word had spread quickly through the terminal, and several people offered supportive comments as they passed. A businessman paused to shake Marcus's hand, while a mother with young children made sure her kids understood they were looking at a real hero. Rex immediately settled into position at Marcus's feet, demonstrating the aircraft-specific training that most passengers had never seen before. The dog positioned himself to avoid blocking the aisle while maintaining physical contact with his handler, his body language calm and professional, despite the new environment. Captain Mitchell appeared. In the cabin, having switched to this flight to continue her journey, she stopped by Marcus's seat with a smile. "Mind if I sit next to you? I was supposed to be on this flight anyway, and I'd love to hear more about Rex's training." During the flight, their conversation revealed the depth of the bond between Marcus and his service dog. Rex had been specially trained by a nonprofit organization that works exclusively with combat veterans. The process had taken over 2 years, including 6 months of intensive training where Marcus and Rex learned to work together as a seamless team. "People don't realize that getting a service dog isn't like picking up a pet," Marcus explained to Sarah and the passengers sitting nearby who were listening with interest. "Rex and I had to learn each other's patterns, signals, and needs. He can detect changes in my heart rate, breathing, and stress hormones before I'm even aware of them. As if to demonstrate, Rex lifted his head slightly and placed a paw on Marcus's leg. Marcus hadn't felt the panic attack coming, but Rex had detected the subtle physiological changes and provided the grounding pressure that helped interrupt the episode before it could escalate. "That's incredible," whispered an elderly passenger across the aisle. "I had no idea service dogs were so sophisticated. I feel ashamed for all the times I questioned whether someone really needed their dog." Maria, the flight attendant, had been listening while performing her duties. "We receive basic training about service animals, but nothing as detailed as what you've explained today. This experience is going to help me better serve passengers with disabilities in the future." Meanwhile, back at the airport, the incident was generating significant attention. Several passengers who had witnessed the confrontation were sharing their experiences on social media, praising Marcus's patience and dignity while criticizing the airline's initial response. The videos and posts were being shared widely, generating thousands of comments and reactions. Dr. Hayes, the retired veterinarian, had contacted his colleagues in the service dog training community to share Rex's exemplary behavior as a positive example of proper training. "This is exactly what legitimate service dogs look like," he posted in professional forums. "Calm, focused, task-oriented, and completely devoted to their handler's well-being." The airline's corporate office was monitoring the social media response and had already initiated a comprehensive review of their disability accommodation policies and staff training procedures. The incident was becoming a case study in how quickly situations could escalate in the age of social media and how important proper training was for customer service staff. On the aircraft, Marcus found himself becoming an inadvertent educator about veteran issues and disability rights. A psychology student sitting nearby asked thoughtful questions about PTSD and service dog partnerships, while a business traveler shared his own struggles with anxiety and wondered about therapeutic interventions. "The thing people don't understand," Marcus explained, "is that invisible disabilities are just as real as visible ones. I may look fine on the outside, but Rex is constantly monitoring my physiological and emotional state. He's not just a companion. He's medical equipment that happens to have fur and personality." Rex demonstrated this throughout the flight, making subtle adjustments to his position based on Marcus's stress levels, the aircraft's movements, and the general environment. When turbulence caused some passengers to become anxious, Rex remained perfectly calm, providing stability for Marcus while other service animals might have become agitated. A mother traveling with her autistic son observed Rex's behavior with fascination. "My son has been asking about getting a service dog to help with his social anxiety and sensory processing issues. Watching Rex work has been more educational than hours of research." Sarah had been documenting the flight experience, not for social media but for her planned presentation to airline management about improving disability services. "Marcus, would you be willing to speak at training sessions for airline staff? Your perspective and Rex's demonstration would be invaluable." Marcus considered the request carefully. If it helps other veterans and disabled passengers avoid what happened today, then absolutely. But I want to make sure the focus stays on education and improvement, not on blame or punishment. The flight was nearing Denver, and Marcus was finally allowing himself to relax and think about his sister's wedding. The confrontation at the airport had been emotionally draining, but the support from fellow passengers and the professional treatment from the flight crew had restored his faith in basic human decency. Rex sensed his handler's improved mood and allowed himself to relax slightly, though he maintained his professional alertness. Several passengers had commented on how the dog seemed to always know exactly what Marcus needed, when he needed it. As they prepared for landing, Maria made an announcement that surprised everyone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special passenger on board today. Mr. Williams is a United States Army veteran who served 3 tours in Afghanistan. His service dog Rex is a working medical partner who helps him navigate the challenges of invisible disabilities. Today at the airport, we witnessed both ignorance and education, discrimination and advocacy. I want to thank all the passengers who stood up for what was right and reminded us that we're all part of a community that should support our veterans and disabled citizens. The aircraft erupted in applause that lasted nearly a minute. Marcus felt tears welling up in his eyes, overwhelmed by the unexpected recognition and support. Rex, sensing his handler's emotional state, provided gentle pressure therapy while maintaining his professional demeanor. As they taxied to the gate in Denver, passengers were already planning to share their positive flight experience on social media, creating a counter-narrative to the negative airport incident. The story was becoming bigger than just one veteran and his service dog. It was becoming a conversation about how society can do better by its most vulnerable members while celebrating those who serve as advocates and allies. The Denver airport terminal buzzed with its usual activity, but Marcus Williams felt a different energy as he and Rex disembarked from Flight 447. Word about the earlier incident had somehow reached Denver, and several airport employees greeted them with unusual warmth and professionalism. The contrast with his earlier experience was remarkable. At the baggage claim area, Marcus was approached by a Denver Post reporter who had been monitoring the social media coverage of the incident. "Mr. Williams, I'm Janet Rodriguez from the Denver Post. Would you be willing to share your experience? Your story is resonating with thousands of people online." Marcus hesitated, still processing the day's events. Rex sensed his uncertainty and moved closer, providing the subtle support that helped his handler make decisions under pressure. "I'll talk, but only if the focus is on educating people about service dogs and veteran issues, not on attacking the airline staff who made mistakes." The brief interview that followed would later be published as a feature article about disability rights, veteran advocacy, and the power of community support. Marcus's measured response to discrimination, combined with Rex's professional demonstration of service dog capabilities, provided a compelling narrative about resilience and education over retaliation. Meanwhile, the original airport incident continued generating national attention. The airline's corporate headquarters had been flooded with calls and emails from customers, disability rights organizations, and veteran advocacy groups. The company's CEO, Patricia Holmes, made the decision to personally address the situation. Within hours, a comprehensive statement was released acknowledging the mishandling of the situation, apologizing to Marcus specifically, and announcing immediate changes to staff training protocols. The airline also announced a partnership with veteran service organizations to improve their understanding of military-related disabilities and service dog requirements. Back in Denver, Marcus finally arrived at his sister's hotel, emotionally exhausted but grateful for the overwhelming support he had received. His sister Amanda rushed to greet them, having followed the entire incident through social media posts from other passengers. "Marcus, I'm so proud of how you handled everything today," Amanda said, hugging her brother carefully while Rex maintained his professional distance. "But I'm furious that you had to go through that at all." The hotel staff, who had also heard about the incident through local news coverage, went out of their way to ensure Marcus and Rex were comfortable. The manager personally showed them to their room and explained the hotel's service dog policies, demonstrating the kind of proactive accommodation that should have happened at the airport. That evening, Marcus received a phone call that surprised him. Dr. Patricia Holmes, the airline CEO, was calling personally to apologize and discuss how the company could improve its services for disabled passengers. "Mr. Williams, I want to personally apologize for the discrimination you experienced today. There's no excuse for how our staff treated you, and I'm committed to ensuring this never happens again to any passenger." Marcus appreciated the call, but remained focused on systemic change rather than personal apologies. "Dr. Holmes, I accept your apology, but what I really want is comprehensive training for all airline staff about disability rights and service animals. Too many veterans and disabled people face these situations every day." The conversation lasted nearly an hour, with Marcus providing detailed suggestions for improving staff training, updating policies, and creating better accommodation procedures. Dr. Holmes took notes personally and committed to implementing changes within 60 days. Social media continued buzzing with the story throughout the evening. The hashtag, Rex the Service Dog, was trending, nationally, with thousands of people sharing their own experiences with service dogs, disability discrimination, and military service. The conversation had evolved beyond this single incident into a broader discussion about societal attitudes toward invisible disabilities. Captain Sarah Mitchell, who had become an unexpected advocate during the incident, used her platform to educate her colleagues about proper service dog protocols. Her detailed posts about the legal requirements and professional behavior of legitimate service dogs were being shared widely in aviation industry forums. Dr. Hayes, the veterinarian who had supported Marcus at the airport, was contacted by multiple news outlets to provide expert commentary about service dog training and identification. His professional validation of Rex's behavior became a key part of the narrative, helping people understand the difference between legitimate service dogs and emotional support animals. The story reached international attention when a British veteran advocacy group shared it as an example of how disabled veterans are treated in different countries. Military service organizations across Europe and Australia began sharing their own resources about service dog rights and veteran support. In his hotel room, Marcus sat quietly with Rex, processing the day's events. The wedding was tomorrow, and he wanted to focus on celebrating his sister rather than continuing to deal with media attention. Rex sensed his handler's need for quiet and positioned himself for maximum comfort and security. Amanda knocked softly and entered with dinner for both Marcus and Rex. The hotel chef prepared something special for Rex, she said, showing them a carefully prepared meal appropriate for a working service dog. Everyone here has been asking about you two all evening. As they ate together, Amanda shared how the incident had affected their extended family. Grandpa called 3 times today. He's furious about how you were treated, but so proud of how you handled it. He wants to write letters to every airline CEO in the country. Marcus smiled for the first time all day. Tell Grandpa I appreciate the support, but the airline is already making changes. Sometimes education works better than anger. The evening news featured the story as their lead segment, interviewing disability rights advocates, veteran representatives, and transportation law experts. The consensus was clear. The incident represented a common problem in how society treats people with invisible disabilities, but the response demonstrated the power of community advocacy and corporate accountability. Rex settled in for the night, maintaining his vigilant watch over Marcus even while resting. The day had been challenging, but both handler and dog had performed their roles professionally under intense public scrutiny. Their partnership had become a symbol of resilience, advocacy, and the ongoing struggle for disability rights. As Marcus prepared for bed, he reflected on how one routine flight had become a national conversation about respect, dignity, and civil rights. Tomorrow would bring his sister's wedding and hopefully a return to privacy, but the impact of today's events would continue rippling through training programs, policy changes, and public awareness for months to come. The incident that had started with discrimination had evolved into education, advocacy, and ultimately positive change. Marcus fell asleep knowing that his difficult day might help other veterans and disabled Americans receive better treatment in the future, while Rex maintained his quiet watch, ready for whatever challenges tomorrow might bring. 6 months later, Marcus Williams stood in the same airport terminal where his ordeal had begun, but everything had changed. He was returning from a speaking engagement at a national veterans conference, where he and Rex had shared their story, with hundreds of service members, advocates, and policymakers. The transformation at the airport was immediately apparent. New signage clearly outlined service animal policies, and Marcus noticed several staff members wearing pins indicating specialized disability awareness training. The gate agent who checked him in was knowledgeable about service dog regulations and processed his boarding without a single question about Rex's legitimacy. Jennifer Walsh, the original gate agent who had denied him service, approached hesitantly during his layover. She looked nervous but determined as she walked toward Marcus and Rex, who were sitting quietly in the waiting area. "Mr. Williams," she began, her voice much softer than it had been 6 months earlier. "I don't know if you remember me, but I was the gate agent who treated you so poorly that day. I wanted to thank you." Marcus looked up, surprised to see her. Rex remained calm, sensing no threat from the approaching woman. "Thank me?" "Yes," Jennifer continued, sitting down carefully, in a nearby chair. After that incident, I realized how much I didn't know about disabilities, service dogs, and the law. The airline required all of us to complete extensive training, but I went further. I volunteered with a local veterans organization and completed a certification course in disability awareness. She pulled out her phone and showed Marcus photos of herself working with disabled veterans at a local rehabilitation center. "I've learned so much about invisible disabilities and the challenges veterans face. Your patience with my ignorance that day taught me more than any training manual could have." Marcus was moved by her genuine transformation. "Jennifer, everyone makes mistakes. What matters is learning from them and doing better. I wanted you to know that your story has changed how we operate," she continued. "We've accommodated dozens of service dog handlers since your incident, and every interaction has been professional and respectful. The staff talks about you and Rex as examples of grace under pressure." Rex, sensing the emotional nature of the conversation, remained perfectly still but alert, ready to provide support if Marcus needed it. Several other passengers recognized Marcus from news coverage and social media, offering respectful nods of recognition without interrupting the conversation. Jennifer stood to leave, but turned back one more time. The airline created a scholarship program for veterans pursuing service dog training, and they asked me to help coordinate it. "Would you be willing to serve on the advisory board?" Marcus considered the request while Rex provided gentle pressure therapy, sensing his handler's emotional response to the unexpected opportunity. "I'd be honored to help other veterans access the same life-changing partnership I have with Rex." As Jennifer walked away, Marcus reflected on how dramatically his life had changed since that difficult day. The initial incident had been painful and discriminatory, but the response had created opportunities to advocate for disabled veterans and educate the public about service dogs. His phone buzzed with messages from various advocacy organizations, media outlets, and fellow veterans who had been inspired by his story. The speaking engagement he was returning from had been particularly meaningful, with several attendees sharing how his experience had motivated them to seek service dog partnerships or become advocates for disability rights. Dr. Hayes, the veterinarian, who had supported him during the original incident, had stayed in touch and helped connect Marcus with service dog organizations across the country. Together, they had developed educational materials that were now being used in airports, hotels, and businesses nationwide. Captain Sarah Mitchell had also remained involved, using her position in the airline industry to advocate for better disability accommodation training. She had testified before Congress about transportation accessibility and credited Marcus's incident as a catalyst for industry-wide improvements. The airline had indeed implemented comprehensive changes. Their new training program was considered the gold standard in the industry, and other airlines had adopted similar protocols. Customer satisfaction scores for disability accommodation had improved dramatically, and the company had received multiple awards for their inclusivity initiatives. Marcus's sister Amanda had kept him updated on the ongoing impact through social media monitoring. The hashtag #OurRexTheServiceDog continued to be used by advocates sharing positive service dog experiences and educational content. The story had inspired legislation in 3 states, improving service dog access rights and penalties for discrimination. His flight was called for boarding. Marcus stood and Rex immediately adjusted to provide stability. The pre-boarding announcement specifically welcomed passengers with disabilities and service animals, a small but significant change that made the process smoother for everyone involved. During the flight, a young veteran with a newly trained service dog approached Marcus nervously. "Excuse me, sir, but are you the veteran from that viral airport video? Your story inspired me to get help for my PTSD, and I just graduated from service dog training last month." Marcus spent the flight sharing practical advice about traveling with service dogs, navigating public spaces, and advocating for disability rights. Rex and the young veteran's dog, a golden retriever named Charlie, demonstrated perfect professional behavior that impressed other passengers and flight crew. The flight attendant, Maria Santos, who had served Marcus during his original, difficult journey, was working this flight as well. She stopped by to chat and share how the incident had influenced her career. "That day changed how I approach every passenger," she explained. "I completed additional training in disability awareness and now serve as a mentor for new flight attendants." Your story is part of our required training curriculum. As the plane descended toward his home airport, Marcus looked out the window and reflected on the unexpected journey that had begun with discrimination and evolved into advocacy. The painful incident had ultimately created positive change for countless disabled Americans and their service animals. Rex sensed they were approaching home and maintained his alert position, ready to navigate whatever challenges awaited them. The partnership between veteran and service dog had become a symbol of resilience, education, and the power of individual stories to create systemic change. Upon landing, Marcus was greeted by representatives from multiple veterans organizations who had gathered to welcome him home from his successful speaking tour. The airport staff treated him with the respect and professionalism that should have been routine from the beginning, but now felt especially meaningful given the journey they had all taken together. As he walked through the terminal with Rex by his side, Marcus encountered numerous positive interactions with travelers and staff who recognized them. Children pointed excitedly at the famous service dog, while their parents used the opportunity to teach about disabilities, military service, and treating everyone with dignity. The incident that had started as a nightmare had become a catalyst for education, advocacy, and positive change that would benefit disabled Americans for years to come. Marcus and Rex headed home, their mission of service continuing in new and unexpected ways, proving that sometimes the most difficult moments can lead to the most meaningful impacts.